The poet described how Savitri and Satyavan merge into each other, burning of two bodies in one flame. It was the early few weeks of the married life, and they were locked with each other into unforgettable bliss. Opened were gates of unforgettable bliss. Two lives were locked within an earthly heaven, and fate and grief fled from that fiery hour. But soon, Savitri has to awaken herself to the reality which is approaching very close. The death of Satyavan 1 year after the marriage. She had forgotten about it totally in the beginning, but now that memory comes to her and she is caught into two different moods of grief and happiness. Grief, remembering about the foretold death. Happiness, forgetting all these contingencies of fate and it locked with her lover, Satyavan. But soon now failed summer's ardent breath, and throngs of blue-black clouds crept through the sky, and rain fled sobbing over the dripping leaves, and storm became the forest titan voice. The mood of poetry also has changed. The happiness which has been described in the few earlier lines has now suddenly changed to the grief-ridden sky, the cloud, the rains, blue-black clouds, rains bringing grief, tears of grief. But soon now failed summer's ardent breath. Now here, this phrase is significant. Summer's ardent breath. Summer, that is the chosen month. Savitri and Satyavan got married in summer. 1 year after the marriage, it means again in summer, Satyavan is to die. The physical cause for the death of Satyavan is linked up with this month of summer. According to tradition, it is sometime around June, Jyeshtha, as the Indian calendars would say, in the month of Jyeshtha, that the death of Satyavan occurs. It means also that the marriage was performed in the month of June, Jyeshtha. But so now failed summer's ardent breath, and throngs of blue-black cloud crept through the sky. Immediately after the summer comes the monsoon with heavy rains pounding the entire landscape. And rain fled sobbing with the dripping leaves, and storm became the forest titan's voice. This must have been also the first experience of Savitri to see the storm and the fury in the wilderness of the Shalva hermitages. Then, listening to the thunder's fatal crash and the fugitive pattering footsteps of the showers and the long unsatisfied panting of the wind and sorrow muttering in the sound vexed night, the grief of all the world came near to her. Night's darkness seemed her future's ominous face. The poet has switched on to a grim picture of the season, depicting also the psychological plight of Savitri. Night's darkness seemed her future's ominous face. Night has come, and it is she who is showing her the ominous face of the events to come, the darkness, the sad happening which is going to be soon there. The shadow of her lover's doom arose. This is tremendous poetry again. You have got nice darkness showing the face. You have got in that darkness of night the shadow of her lover is doom. They have met everything very vivid. Grief, darkness, night, shadow. They are very descriptive terms, not only portraying the psychological condition of Savitri, but also the very mood of nature. And sorrow muttering in the sound vexed night, the grief of all the world came near to her. Grief of all the world. Savitri is human Savitri, but even in her humanity, she is divine. Her identification with the entire world is there, even in her humanity. The grief of all the world came near to her. In the occult sense, it is not Savitri's personal grief, the grief of the individual. It is the universal grief. The grief of the world which is gathering into the moment of the night, of the doom, wearing an ominous face. The moment swift and ruthless raced, alarmed her thoughts. Her mind remembered Narad's date. While she was enjoying the company of Satyavan, she had forgotten everything. Grief, pain, Narad's date, everything had completely got out of her mind. But the moment also comes when she is forced, she is made, she is in a state that she has to remember what is going to happen very shortly. Alarmed, her thoughts, her mind remembered Narad's date. Narad had foretold that 1 year after the marriage, Satyavan will die. 12 swift-winged months are given to him and her. That was Narad's prophecy. Narad tells the royal host, of course, in the presence of Savitri, in one brief year, when this bright hour flies back and perches careless on a branch of time, the sovereign glory ends, heaven lent to earth. Satyavan, sovereign glory lent by heaven to earth. The sovereign glory ends, heaven lent to earth. The splendor vanishes from the mortal's sky. Heaven's greatness came, but was too great to stay. It cannot stay too long. The greatness of heaven itself is responsible for the calamity, for the doom, for the death. Heaven's greatness came, but was too great to stay. 12 swift-winged months are given to him and her. This day returning, Satyavan must die. That is the word of fate Narad has brought from his home in paradise. This day returning, Satyavan must die. The moment is fixed, the hour is fixed, the time is fixed. Everything is decreed and nothing can change it. Nothing has power to alter it. It has to happen. 12 swift-winged months are given to him and her. This is the prophecy. This is the word of fate. And Savitri remembers that. She is in the company of her lover, but suddenly that memory comes to her. Yes, very short time is there now for them to be together. Swift-winged months will fly away quickly, and her lover will be no more there. Now this particular prophecy of Narad is given here in great epic style in Savitri. 12 swift-winged months are given to him and her. 12 swift-winged months. You had two solid spondees open in the line. Are given to him and her. That's the rhythm. 12 swift-winged months. So there is a kind of a strength in what he is telling. The firmness of the decree is conveyed in an equally forceful manner by the poetic art, by the use of those two rare spondees. In contrast to that, we have a couplet describing this particular thing by Ramesh Chandra Dutt in his translation of the Mahabharata Savitri. His couplet is in the Loxley home meter. 14ers. Fateful fault or destined sorrow, fateful fault or destined sorrow, for it is decreed on high. On this day, a 12-month later, this ill-fated prince will die. On this day, a 12 months later, this ill-fated prince will die. He says it is the bad luck of Satyavan. He is ill-fated prince. Now that is not at all the sense that gets conveyed in Nara's utterance. Nara's utterance is more positive. He says, the sovereign glory, there is no question of ill-fated prince. The sovereign glory ends, heaven lent to earth. The splendor vanishes from the mortal sky. Heaven's greatness came, but was too great to stay. There is absolutely no suggestion of ill-fated friends in Savitri Savitri. In fact, the original Savitri, Vyasa Savitri in the Mahabharata also makes this declaration in a totally unattached manner, in the manner of a witness Purusha. Vyasa says, Samvatsarena Kshinayur Deha Nyasam Krishyati. Samvatsarena, 1 year afterwards, Samvatsara year, Samvatsarena Kshinayur Deha, when the body becomes weak. When the body becomes weak, that he will abandon it. Dehanyasa karishyati. He will abandon Deha. He is life exhausted. He will abandon the body. That is what Vyasa says. Almost in a kind of a matter of fact manner. It's all right, Devan. It's okay. Yeah. The grief of all the world came near to her Night's darkness seemed a future's ominous face. The shadow of her lover's doom arose and fear laid hands upon her mortal heart. The moment swift and ruthless raced, alarmed her thoughts, her mind remembered Nara's fate. In that psychological state, a trembling, moved accountant of her riches. She is a rich lady, but she has to count her treasure with trembling hands. With trembling hands. She reckoned the insufficient days between. A dire expectancy knocked at her breast. Dreadful to her were the footsteps of the hours. Grief came, a passionate stranger of the hours. Grief came, a passionate stranger to her gate. Vanished when his arms, out of a sleep, it rose at morn to look into her face. This is the psychological condition of Savitri. A trembling, moved accountant of her riches. Again, a very beautiful line poetically. A trembling, moved accountant of her riches. That's the reason. A trembling, moved accountant of her riches. You have got Greek followed by amphibrach. She reckoned the insufficient days between. A dire expectancy knocked at her breast. Dreadful to her were the footsteps of the hours. Grief came, a passionate stranger to her gate. Vanished when his arms, out of a sleep it rose at morn to look into his face. A passionate stranger, grief personified as a passionate stranger. Passionate as if someone who is compelled to do it, who is ruled by some kind of a force. Passionate, very intense, very emotional, strong, you can even say fervid, very vehement, very ardent. Basically, it is intense grief that visits Savitri. He comes as a guest, at a guest. Grief came, a passionate stranger, to her gate. He will do that which he has come here to do. That is the passion, that is the force. Banished when in his arms, in his, suppose, Satyavan's arms. Out of her sleep it rose. In the morning when she gets up, it is that guest who is waiting at her gate, at the door of the hermitage. Savitri has to receive in the morning this intense stranger, this passionate stranger. Vainly she fled into the visions of bliss. She tries to go back and live in the moments of happiness, but the foresight is there, and it is that which is telling her, no, the grief is waiting there at the gate, at the doors in the hermitage. Vainly she fled into visions of bliss. From her pursuing foresight of the end, the more she plunged into love, that anguish grew. She clings very passionately to Satyavan. The more she draws closer to him, the more this grief becomes intense. This is a typical Arvandonian balance of grief and bliss. Experience by Savitri. Her deepest grief from the sweetest girls arose. Her grief comes from sorrow, from bliss, from happiness. Deepest grief, her sorrow comes from happiness. Again, an Arvindonian dichotomy fused with the contrast coming together. Vainly she fled into visions of bliss, from her pursuing foresight of the end. The more she plunged into love, that anguish grew. The more she plunged into love, that anguish grew. So that's the matter. The more, we can almost say, she plunged and into love. Long, short, long, critic, into love. That anguish grew. So here we got am, a critic. Again, and am. So these two are balanced very beautifully by the critic in the center. The more she plunged into love, that anguish grew. Her deepest grief from sweetest gulls arose, a perfect iambic line. Her deepest grief from sweetest gulls arose. Remembrance was a poignant pang. She felt each day a golden leaf torn cruelly out from a too slender book of love and joy. 12 passionate, swift-winged months. So each day is being torn off from the calendar, every day, very swiftly. Each day a golden leaf torn cruelly out from her too slender book of love and joy. Thus, swaying in strong gusts of happiness and swimming in forebodings of somber waves and feeling sorrow and terror with her heart. For now, they sat among their bosom's guests, or in the inner chamber, paced apart. Her eyes stared blind into the future's night. This is what Savitri is experiencing, bliss and sorrow simultaneously in one moment. A very difficult psychological state. And it is only someone who is great can bear both simultaneously. The swaying in strong gusts of happiness and swimming in forwarding sonorous wave and feeling sorrow and terror with her heart, she is facing the future. Grief and happiness, sorrow and bliss, they alternate. In the same chamber, one walks one moment, he goes away and the other enters in, facing apart in the same chamber, in the same room. Well, this is the plight of human nature. Transient and sorrowful, anityam, asukam. This is what the Gita says. This samsara, this world, this mortality, this human plight, condition is full of sorrow and suffering. And also there is bliss, and they keep on alternating constantly. Now, this plight of Savitri has already been described by the poet right at the beginning, in the very first canto itself, the opening canto, December Dawn. Let us read a few lines from that. How he describes what is now being presented in the book of Yoga. Even in this moment of a soul's despair, its grim rendezvous with death and fear, no cry broke from her lips, no call for aid. She told the secret of her woe to none. Calm was her face, and courage kept her mute. Yet only her outward self suffered and strove. So what is being described here is Savitri's outward self. Yet only her outward self suffered and strove. Even her humanity was half divine. That is why her grief was not her personal grief. It was the world's grief which was drawing closer. Her humanity was half divine. Her spirit open to the spirit in all. Her nature felt all nature as its own. The grief of all the world came near to her because of this oneness, because of this identity of Savitri with the world. Apart, living within, all life she bore. Aloof, she carried in herself the world. Her dread was one with the great cosmic dread. Her strength was founded on the cosmic minds. The universal mother's love was hers. So it is this universal mother who is experiencing this bliss and sorrow through human Savitri. Again the evil at life's afflicted roots, Her own calamity is private sign. Of her pang she made a mystic poignant sword. A solitary mind, a worldwide heart, to the lone immortal's unshared work, she wrote. Savitri has now rise soon for her immortal work. At first, life grieved not in her burdened breast. On the lap of earth's original somnolence, inert, released into forgetfulness, prone it repose, and conscious on mind's verge, obtuse and tranquil as a stone and star. In a deep cleft of silence betwixt two realms, she lay remote from grief, unsound by care, nothing recalling of the sorrow here. When she is in the company of Satyavan, she does not recall the sorrow. Then a slow, faint remembrance, shadow-like moved, and sighing she laid her hand upon her bosom. Then a slow, faint remembrance, shadow-like moved. She remembers Narad's date. 12 swift twin months are given to him and her. A slow, faint remembrance comes. So we have already that description in the opening canto itself. But there is a certain difference. What is being described in the book of Yoga is human Savitri undergoing through that stage, experiencing simultaneously happiness and sorrow. What is described in the symbol dawn is something which is being experienced by the Divine Mother herself in the transcendent. It is an experience in the transcendent, whereas in the book of Yoga, Savitri's experience is on earth. So it has a certain kind of a poignancy, certain definiteness, certain meaning, that things had to happen here on earth. And Savitri is going to that stage.